Have you ever been pushed away just for being too calm? They call you cold, detached, arrogant. But the truth is, you simply see what they're running from. And that's exactly why they leave. Not because you're wrong, but because you're a mirror reflecting what they refuse to face. Today we're exploring mirror projection psychology, the phenomenon that makes the most aware people often the loneliest. The question is, when you become the mirror they can't face, what do you do? The threat of awareness when your calm exposes their chaos. Let me tell you about Sarah. She worked in a corporate office where drama was the daily currency. Gossip in the break room, passive-aggressive emails, emotional outbursts in meetings. But Sarah, she stayed calm. She set boundaries. She didn't engage in the chaos. And you know what happened? People started avoiding her. They said she was cold, that she thought she was better than everyone else. But here's the truth. Sarah didn't do anything wrong. Her calmness was a mirror, and in that mirror her colleagues saw their own chaos reflected back at them. Her peace exposed their inner turmoil. Her boundaries revealed their lack of self-control. This is what Carl Jung understood deeply. When you're grounded in awareness, your presence activates what others have buried. The parts of themselves they don't want to see, the emotions they've repressed, the truths they're avoiding. Your stillness becomes a threat to their unconscious patterns. Think about it. Have you ever been called cold when you were simply being calm? Accused of being arrogant when you were just setting healthy boundaries, labeled as judgmental? When you weren't judging at all, you were just not participating in their illusion. This is the paradox of awareness. The clearer you become, the more isolated you feel, because clarity disrupts illusion. And many people would rather cling to comfortable lies than face uncomfortable truths. Here's the painful reality: you're being punished for your peace. You're being rejected for your self-awareness. You're being exiled for refusing to play along with the collective unconscious drama. But here's what you need to understand. You didn't cause their reaction. Your clarity revealed it. Their discomfort isn't about you. It's about what they see when they look at you. It's about the questions your presence raises in their minds. Why can't I be that calm? Why do I always react? What am I avoiding? And instead of sitting with those questions, they project their discomfort onto you. The lesson here is simple but profound. Your awareness isn't the problem. Their avoidance is. You're not responsible for how others respond to your peace. You're only responsible for maintaining it. But this raises an even deeper question. If your presence alone can trigger such strong reactions, what exactly is happening beneath the surface? What psychological mechanism makes people turn away from the very mirror they need most? Let's dive deeper into the science and psychology behind this phenomenon. 2. Mirror projection psychology. How the mind avoids itself. So what exactly is happening when people react to your calm with hostility? Welcome to the world of psychological projection, one of the mind's most sophisticated defense mechanisms. Here's how it works. When someone encounters a trait in you that they've denied in themselves, whether it's confidence, peace, or emotional clarity, their mind does something fascinating. Instead of acknowledging what they lack, they project their internal conflict onto you. Think of it like this. You're holding up a mirror, but instead of seeing themselves, They convince themselves that you're the problem with the reflection. The neuroscience behind this is actually remarkable. Your brain contains specialized cells called mirror neurons. These neurons fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing that same action. It's why yawning is contagious, why watching someone in pain makes you wince. But here's where it gets interesting when you're in the presence of someone who's deeply calm while you're internally chaotic. Your mirror neurons create an uncomfortable dissonance. Your nervous system feels the gap between their peace and your turmoil. And that feeling, it's unbearable for the unconscious mind. So the mind does what it does best: it projects. There are three main forms of projection you'll encounter. First, fear projection. Someone sees your confidence and immediately feels threatened. But instead of admitting their own insecurity, they label you as intimidating or showing off. I once knew a friend, Marcus, who started his own business. He was quietly confident, never boastful, but his old college friends stopped inviting him out. They said he'd changed and become too good for them. The truth, his growth reminded them of their own stagnation. His courage reflected their fear, so they projected that discomfort as arrogance. Second, idealization. Projection. This one's tricky. Someone puts you on a pedestal, worships your clarity, calls you their inspiration. They project all their hopes and ideal qualities onto you. But the moment you show you're human, make a mistake, have a bad day, set a boundary with them, the illusion shatters, and suddenly you're not their hero anymore. You're their villain. The crash from idealization to devaluation can be brutal. Third, shadow projection. This is the darkest form. Someone projects the parts of themselves they hate most onto you. If they secretly judge themselves as selfish, they'll accuse you of being selfish. If they're dishonest with themselves, they'll call you fake. It's easier to blame you than to face their own shadow. Now here's where it gets especially difficult for empaths and highly sensitive people. Because you feel so deeply, you start absorbing these projections. Someone calls you cold, and you think, am I cold? Maybe I am. Someone says you're arrogant, and you spend days questioning your every action. You take on emotional debris that was never yours to carry. But here's the liberating truth you need to hear. You are not responsible for other people's discomfort with themselves. Their projection is not your truth. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Their inability to face themselves is not your burden to fix. When someone projects onto you, they're telling you everything about their inner world and nothing about yours. The real question becomes, what happens when you stop absorbing these projections, when you refuse to carry what isn't yours? That's when things get even more complicated, because your refusal to play along, it breaks something fundamental in the relationship dynamic. 3. The mirror breaks when awareness ends illusion. There's a predictable pattern to how relationships end when one person becomes more aware. It always starts with harmony. Everything feels easy. You're on the same wavelength. You share the same complaints, the same stories, the same ways of avoiding difficult truths. Then you change. Maybe you start therapy. Maybe you read books on self-awareness. Maybe life hands you a crisis that forces you to look inward. And suddenly the tension begins. You stop engaging in the gossip. You don't want to complain about the same things anymore. You set boundaries where there were none before. You speak truths that used to stay silent. Your friends notice, your family notices, and they don't like it. Finally comes the projection. You've changed. You think you're better than us. You're not fun anymore. And here's the unspoken truth beneath all those accusations. If I can blame you, I don't have to change. Let me tell you about Elena. She and her sister were inseparable growing up. They bonded over their difficult childhood, their controlling mother, their shared wounds. It was them against the world. But then Elena started healing. She went to therapy. She set boundaries with their mother. She stopped participating in the endless Sun Huan of blame and victimhood. Her sister felt abandoned. "You've become cold," she said. "You don't understand what I'm going through anymore." But that wasn't true. Elena understood perfectly. She just refused to stay stuck in the story. This is what awareness does. It disrupts the shared fantasy. Many relationships are built on unspoken agreements. We'll never talk about this. We'll always blame them. We'll stay comfortable in our dysfunction together. Your awareness breaks that agreement. And when the illusion shatters, people have two choices: grow with you or exile you. Most choose exile. This is the loneliest part of awakening, losing people, not because you hurt them, but because you stopped pretending with them. And here's where the internal war begins. Guilt versus integrity. The guilt whispers, maybe you are too much. Maybe you should dim your light. Maybe you're being selfish. But your integrity knows the truth. I can't unsee what I've seen. I can't unknow what I know. I can't go back to sleep. You're caught between the pain of solitude and the suffocation of pretending. I won't lie to you, this is brutal. There will be moments when you question everything, when you wonder if awareness is worth the cost, when you feel so alone you almost call those people back just to feel connected again. But here's the reframe that changes everything. Your solitude is not evidence of failure, it's evidence of clarity. You're not alone because something is wrong with you. You're alone because you've outgrown the illusions that keep most people comfortable. The relationships you lost, they weren't built on truth. They were built on shared avoidance. And anything built on avoidance eventually crumbles when someone starts facing reality. This doesn't make it hurt less, but it does make it mean something different. You're not being rejected. You're being freed. Freed from performing. Freed from pretending. Freed from carrying other people's unwillingness to look in the mirror. But there's a dangerous trap waiting in this freedom, especially for those of us who feel deeply. Because when you've spent your whole life absorbing other people's emotions, solitude can quickly turn into something else entirely. The empath's trap. When healing turns into absorption. If you're someone who feels deeply, you know this exhaustion intimately. You walk into a room and immediately sense the tension. Your friend is sad, and suddenly you're sad. A colleague is anxious, and your chest tightens. You absorb emotions like a sponge absorbs water automatically, completely, without even trying. And somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself this was your gift, your purpose, your way of helping. But here's the truth nobody tells empaths. There's a difference between compassion and absorption. Compassion says, I see your pain and I'm here with you. Absorption says, I'll take your pain and carry it for you. One is presence, the other is sacrifice. Let me introduce you to Maya. Maya was the friend everyone called during a crisis. Breakups, family drama, work, stress, she was there. She'd listen for hours, absorb every detail, feel every emotion as if it were her own. People told her she was such a good listener, that she was so caring, that they didn't know what they'd do without her. But Maya was drowning. She'd hang up the phone and feel depleted, hollow, like she'd given away pieces of herself she couldn't get back. She developed headaches, insomnia, a constant low-grade anxiety that had no clear source because it wasn't hers. It belonged to everyone she'd absorbed. This is the empath's trap, mistaking compassion for responsibility. Remember those mirror neurons we talked about? When you have highly active mirror neurons and blurred boundaries, you don't just empathize with others, you become them. Their emotions override yours. Their problems become your problems. Their healing becomes your mission. And slowly, without realizing it, you become a vessel for everyone else's shadow. The healer who never heals themselves. The helper who's forgotten what they need. The emotional support who has no support of their own. So, what's the solution? Compassionate detachment. This isn't about becoming cold or shutting people out. It's about learning to reflect without merging. Think of yourself as a calm lake. When someone brings their storm to you, the lake's surface might ripple, but the lake doesn't become the storm. It reflects it. It acknowledges it. But it remains itself. This is the skill of reflecting, not absorbing. You can witness someone's pain without carrying it. You can hold space for their emotions without making them yours. You can be present without being consumed. For Maya, this shift changed everything. She learned to say, I hear you, and that sounds really difficult, without taking on the weight of fixing it. She started noticing when she was feeling her feelings versus absorbing their feelings. She created boundaries around her energy, not out of selfishness, but out of self-preservation. And you know what happened? Her relationships didn't fall apart. They actually deepened, because she was finally showing up as herself, not as an emotional recycling bin for everyone else's unprocessed feelings. Here's what you need to hear. Reclaiming your energy is not selfish. Setting boundaries is not cruel. Choosing not to absorb someone's pain is not abandonment. You're not cold, you're clear. There's a profound difference between being closed off and being boundaried, between being unfeeling and being sovereign over your own emotional space. But here's where it gets even more interesting, because once you stop absorbing projections, once you start reflecting clearly without taking things personally, something remarkable happens. You begin to see patterns. You notice that certain reactions say more about the person having them than about you. 5. Reflections of rejection. What their discomfort reveals. Here's something I wish someone had told me years ago. Rejection is not always about you. Sometimes it's the most honest feedback about where someone else is in their journey. Think of yourself as a mirror. The cleaner and clearer that mirror becomes, the more accurately it reflects. And here's the paradox. The clearer you are, the stronger the reaction you'll trigger in people who aren't ready to see themselves. It's not personal, it's proportional. Let me tell you about James. James spent years in therapy working through his anger issues, his childhood wounds, his patterns of self-sabotage. He became remarkably calm, grounded, present. Then he attended his college reunion. His old friends felt uncomfortable around him. They made jokes about him being too zen and no fun anymore. One friend even said, "Dude, you're making us all look bad just by standing there." James didn't say anything preachy. He didn't judge anyone. He just existed in his peace. And that peace was unbearable for them, because the cleaner the mirror, the sharper the reflection. James's calmness revealed their chaos. His healing highlighted their wounds. His presence asked a silent question they weren't ready to answer. If he can change, why haven't I? The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When someone does you wrong, don't judge the action. Consider what led them to it." Other people's reactions reveal their level of awareness, not your worth. When someone rejects your boundaries, it reveals their relationship with boundaries. When someone calls your peace coldness, it reveals their discomfort with stillness. When someone criticizes your growth, it reveals their fear of change. Here's the principle: resistance equals resonance. The things that trigger people most intensely are often the things that resonate with their deepest wounds. Your confidence touches their insecurity. Your authenticity confronts their pretending. Your healing mirrors their avoidance. They're not really reacting to you. They're reacting to what you've awakened in them. I know a woman named Sophia who lost most of her friend group after leaving a toxic relationship. Her friends called her dramatic for setting boundaries. They said she was overreacting. But here's what Sophia realized. Most of them were in similarly unhealthy relationships. Her decision to leave held up a mirror to their own situations. And instead of looking at the reflection, they attacked the mirror. This is where the practice becomes essential. Observe instead of personalize. The next time someone reacts strongly to your peace, your boundaries, or your growth, pause. Don't immediately ask, "What did I do wrong?" Instead, get curious. What is my presence revealing in them? This isn't about being judgmental or superior. It's about recognizing that their discomfort is data information about their inner world, not a verdict on your character. Here's the shift that changes everything from, "Why did they reject me?" to, "What did my presence awaken in them?" From, "I must have done something wrong," to, "Their reaction is showing me where they are." From, "Maybe I should change," to, "Maybe this is exactly who I'm meant to be." This doesn't mean you become callous or dismissive of others. It means you stop taking responsibility for reactions that have nothing to do with your actions. You become a conscious observer of the patterns rather than a prisoner of other people's projections. But observation alone isn't enough, because once you see these patterns clearly, once you understand the mechanism of projection, you face a crucial choice. How do you actually live as someone who reflects without absorbing? How do you maintain your clarity without becoming cold? That's where the real practice begins. 6. Becoming the conscious mirror. Reflect, don't absorb. So how do you actually live as a conscious mirror? How do you maintain clarity without becoming cold? How do you reflect without absorbing? This is what I call clarity without absorption. The highest form of emotional mastery. It's the synthesis of Stoic wisdom and Jungian depth. Awareness without reactivity. Presence without entanglement. Awareness plus neutrality equals integrity. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. First, breathing before response. This sounds almost too simple, but it's revolutionary. I once watched a friend Daniel get criticized harshly in a meeting. His colleague accused him of being disconnected from the team and not pulling his weight. The old Daniel would have defended himself immediately, explained, justified, absorbed the attack and carried it home. But this time he paused. He took 3 slow breaths, and then he said calmly, "I hear that you're frustrated. Can you tell me specifically what outcome you're looking for?" No defense, no absorption, just reflection. That pause, that breath, is where freedom lives. It's the space between stimulus and response where you remember, this reaction isn't mine to carry. Second, observational language instead of defense. When someone projects onto you, your instinct is to defend, "I'm not cold. I'm not arrogant. That's not what I meant." But defense validates the projection. It accepts the premise of the accusation. Instead, try observational language. "I notice you're feeling hurt. It sounds like something I said landed differently than I intended. I'm sensing some tension. Help me understand what's happening for you." Notice the shift. You're not taking on their interpretation. You're simply reflecting what you observe without making it about you. A woman named Rachel used this with her mother, who constantly accused her of being selfish for setting boundaries. Instead of defending herself, Rachel started saying, "I hear that my boundaries are hard for you." It disarmed everything, because it was true without being an admission of wrongdoing. Third, energy hygiene through solitude. You cannot be a clear mirror if you're constantly covered in other people's emotional fingerprints. This is why solitude isn't selfish, it's essential. Think of it as cleaning the mirror. Every day you need time alone to discharge the emotional static you've absorbed. To remember who you are beneath everyone else's projections. For some people this is meditation. For others it's walking in nature, journaling, creating art, sitting in silence. The practice doesn't matter as much as the principle. You need regular recalibration to your own frequency. I have a ritual. Every evening I sit quietly for 10 minutes and ask myself, what emotions am I carrying that aren't mine? Then I visualize releasing them, like setting down heavy bags I've been carrying all day. Here's the truth you need to anchor into. You're not here to be understood. You're here to remain whole. Not everyone will get you. Not everyone will appreciate your clarity. Not everyone will value your peace. And that's okay. Your job isn't to convince them. Your job isn't to make them comfortable with your growth. Your job is to embody still reflection, to be the calm lake that mirrors without drowning. This is silent influence, not emotional war. When you stop defending, stop absorbing, stop trying to be understood, something powerful happens. Your presence alone becomes the message. People feel your peace even when they can't articulate it. Your clarity speaks louder than any explanation ever could. You become living proof that it's possible to care without carrying, to love without losing yourself, to be present without being consumed. But I won't pretend this path is easy, because there's a cost to clarity that nobody warns you about. A particular kind of loneliness that comes with seeing too much. 7. Exiled by clarity. The quiet freedom of seeing too much. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with awakening. It's not the loneliness of being physically alone. It's the loneliness of seeing what others refuse to see, of understanding patterns they're still caught in, of speaking a language that sounds foreign to people who once felt like home. This is spiritual X. The more you see, the less you belong. I remember the moment I felt this most acutely. I was at a dinner party with old friends, and everyone was complaining about the same things they'd complained about for years. The same relationships, the same jobs, the same drama. And I sat there unable to participate. Not because I judged them, but because I could see the patterns so clearly now, the loops they were stuck in, the stories they kept telling themselves to avoid change. I wasn't better than them. I was just elsewhere, standing on different ground. That night I went home and cried. Not because they'd rejected me, but because I realized I'd outgrown the comfort of belonging to something that no longer fit. This is the paradox of clarity. You lose comfort. You gain authenticity. And for a long time, the loss feels heavier than the gain. You lose the easy camaraderie of complaining together, the validation of shared wounds, the warmth of being understood without having to explain. But you gain something else, something quieter but infinitely more valuable. You gain yourself. There's a transition period between isolation and liberation, a threshold where you're no longer who you were, but you haven't fully embraced who you're becoming. This is the hardest part, the in-between. You're too awake to pretend, but the awakening still feels raw. You're too clear to go back, but the path forward looks lonely. Let me tell you about Thomas. Thomas went through a profound transformation after his father's death. He started questioning everything: his career, his relationships, his beliefs about success and happiness. His wife couldn't understand the change. His friends thought he was having a crisis. His colleagues worried he'd lost his drive. But Thomas hadn't lost anything. He'd found something. He'd found the courage to stop performing and start being real. The cost: he lost friends. His marriage ended. He left his corporate job. But when I asked him if he regretted it, he said something I'll never forget. Freedom isn't belonging. It's being real even when you're alone. This is the shift from needing validation to finding peace in your own clarity. You stop waiting for others to understand. You stop explaining yourself to people who aren't asking with genuine curiosity. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. And in that stopping, something remarkable happens. The solitude transforms from sentence to sanctuary. Because when you're no longer desperate for belonging, you can finally be selective about who you let into your inner world. You're not accepting scraps of connection from people who only want you when you're dimmed. You're waiting patiently, peacefully, for the few who can meet you where you are. The conscious exit doesn't mean you'll be alone forever. It means you're alone for now, in this specific frequency, at this specific altitude of awareness. But here's what I've learned. The people who can see what you see, they're out there, also wandering, also awake, also wondering if they're the only ones who feel this particular loneliness. And when you meet them, and you will, there's a recognition that goes beyond words, a knowing, a relief. But you can't rush it. You can't force belonging with people who are still asleep. You can't manufacture understanding with those who aren't ready to see. All you can do is this: accept the exile. Honor the solitude. Trust the clarity. Because your aloneness isn't punishment. It's protection. Protection from the exhaustion of pretending. From the cost of dimming your light. From the slow death of belonging to places that no longer nourish your soul. And maybe, just maybe, there's a practice that can help you navigate this exile with grace. Outro the mirror test. So here's your practice. Notice who disappears when you show your real reflection. Don't explain, don't defend, just observe. Each day pause before reacting, let silence reveal truth. Journal 1. Projection you received. What does it say about them, not you? Keep this mirror journal as proof of your growth. You'll start to see the pattern. The people who can't handle your clarity will fade. And the ones who can, they'll find you. If this resonated with you, subscribe to Depth Psychology today. We explore the psychology of awakening the cost of consciousness and the freedom found in seeing clearly. This is the Conscious X, where clarity costs comfort but buys freedom. Stay whole, stay clear, stay you.